What do you think are some of the big drivers of changes in immigration over the next 5-10 years?
Let me tell you the biggest change in immigration that's been happening since about the time of the Great Recession. And it's one of the reasons why the Center for Migration Studies and Pew and everything is finding that we have this much lower rate. And it has nothing to do with what's happening in this country. It has to do with a huge fall in the fertility rate throughout Latin America, which occurred in the 1980s. Mexico has a much lower fertility rate, since the 1990s than it did back in the early 80s and 70s. And that makes all the difference. We did a project for the Social Security Administration in which we tried to actually find ways of forecasting future fertility into the United States. Social Security has, by necessity, these big 75-year projections, and they have to do an estimate for migration because it just makes a difference. They got to know how many workers we're going to have, and they had no way of forecasting it. They just picked a number and said, "That's it. Whatever it is now, we'll just assume it stays that way." We looked at a tremendous amount of data, and one thing we found was one of the best leading indicators of future migration from any given donor country of migrants in the United States. The best leading indicator was the fertility rate of that country. The lower the fertility rate, you suddenly saw a contraction of the number of people coming. So the reason why we're seeing negative net migration now from Mexico is that Mexican families are much smaller now. Most people who migrate are between age 15 and 35. It's kind of a narrow age window, and obviously some children. But everyone now up to age 35 comes from much smaller families. I mean, this was post this big decline in Latin American fertility. And it's not just Mexico, it's many other areas in Latin America. Smaller families, they're simply not going to be sending the same number of kids over the border. The third and fourth and fifth sons of those big families no longer exist. This is why I'm telling our clients, we will never have the same immigration pressure from Latin America in the next several decades than we had in the 1980s, 1990s, early 00s.